Hi, everybody, from St. Michael the Archangel Church in Woodstock, Georgia. It's about an hour north of Atlanta, and it's the home parish of today's guest on Fields and Faith. He's the starting catcher for the Chicago White Sox. He and his wife, Nancy, are a devout Catholic husband and wife. They have a strong allegiance to the little flower, and they have a beautiful daughter to prove that. My guest is Tyler Flowers. I'm Bob Dolan, and this is Fields and Faith. Woodstock, Georgia is the fastest growing city in Cherokee County. It's straight up I-75 north from Atlanta. Major League catcher Tyler Flowers grew up in Woodstock. He attended Blessed Trinity Catholic High School. He was a star baseball player here, and he was then drafted by the Atlanta Braves. He was traded to the White Sox, and he's been in the majors now for 4 seasons. His 2014 season was his most productive yet. 127 games, 15 home runs, including his first ever walk-off, 50 RBIs, and regarded as a very good defensive catcher. Surrounded by his baseball memorabilia in his home office, we talked about his career so far and what he still hopes to accomplish. Tyler, welcome to Fields and Faith. We appreciate your hospitality.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
You have a beautiful home.
Thank you.
I must confess, the 2 favorite parts of your home, the room we're sitting in right now, your office, and then the hitting net in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, do you use that a lot?
I do, a fair bit,
Yeah?
It's, especially now with kids, it's a nice way to not have to go too far and still get some work in. And there's a little gym down there for me, too. Nothing too special, but enough to where I can get a decent workout in, and if the wife starts yelling, I can come upstairs real quick to help her out.
I'll have to put one of those in mine.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Does it work? I mean, we see guys hitting off the tee all the time. Is that really effective?
Yeah, it's a big part. It's very simple and simplistic. Everyone talks about it all the time, but there is a whole lot of value that you can get from hitting off the tee, just understanding points of contact, depths that you hit pitches away, depth you need to hit the pitch inside. So, it's somewhat basic, but the basics are the vast majority of what you need to have success.
And then there's this room. Now, if it was me, and I'm sure most men watching right now, most guys who play ball in their youth, dreamed of being a major league ball player, myself included.
Yeah,
so
me
if I ever had a career, this would be my office. You seem like a big memorabilia guy.
I am.
Yeah, autograph balls behind. Who are some of the balls that you got?
More so balls? Recently.
Yeah.
Of course, Derek Jeter. I got a couple from him. Great guy. I jumped on Mariano Rivera. I got a couple jerseys downstairs. I didn't show you guys, but a couple of those. It seemed kind of silly not to somewhat take advantage of some of those names of guys that are, first of all, great people. And then also great ball players in their own right, and both of those will surely be Hall of Famers. So it's going to be pretty cool to have that later on in life to show my kids or friends. Hey, I played against this guy, and then also have that piece to look back at later and reminisce for myself. Like, you know what, I did all right. I played against Derek Jeter and, those kind of guys.
Yeah. When I said a few seconds ago that a lot of guys dream of being a ball player, when did your dream start?
You know what, most of my life it was a dream of playing football, oddly enough, and I was pretty good at football all the way through high school, and professional scouts for baseball started coming around, and that's when I strongly considered baseball, for a couple of reasons. I think I was starting to turn that way anyway. I really seemed to enjoy it a lot more. I was having very good success, which makes it easier to kind of turn that direction. But the professional scouts came around and really made me believe that I was pretty good. So I think that was a big part of, going that direction. And probably around that time, it started to hit me that, it'd be pretty cool to actually do this. And I actually felt like I had a chance at making it, and it all worked out.
Let's talk briefly about some of the career highlights? I know there's plenty more to come. You're only 27, 28 years old, but your first hit, what do you remember? When did it happen? What do you remember about it?
I remember a lot of stress. I think it was my 8th at bat, I believe, which seems like an eternity when you have no hits.
I'm sure.
You know, everyone wants it to be the first at bat. That didn't work out. Then there was some strikeouts, and then finally I got a start at designated hitter, oddly enough, and it was my 3rd at bat in that game against Victor Marte, a relief pitcher, hard throwing sinker ball guy.
Okay.
I don't prefer sinker ball guys, so. You know, I was somewhat optimistic going into the at bat, and I got into a good count and was able to barrel it up, and it was more or less a CNI single in between short and third, but I couldn't have been more ecstatic about it.
Yeah, yeah. And you got the ball.
There it is.
And who said, did everybody sign it? Is that sort of a tradition for a first hit?
No, nothing on there. You know, when I first saw this, I thought it was the joke ball. You know, there's always the first hit, give it to me, throw it in the stands.
That old trick, yeah.
I still don't know who actually wrote on this ball, but this is actually it with the authentication on there and everything.
Was it a home game?
It was a home game,
okay.
Which was nice. And my wife was there, so she's got her ticket up there, which is kind of cool.
You remember your first Grand Slam? Of course you do.
Of course, yeah. I thought that was going to be the highlight of my career. You know, that's another thing. I think you dream about making it to the major leagues. In addition to that, you dream about hitting a big home run or a Grand Slam, which, you know, sometimes is out of your control if no one gets on base. If the bases aren't loaded, you never have an opportunity. So I was fortunate. I ambushed a first pitch cutter off of Jason Vargas and
very good.
Hit it out in Seattle and got the ball and the lineup card and a couple pictures to remember it by.
When something like that happens, a Grand Slam, a walk-off, which you had a walk-off this past September, are you, as you're running around the bases, are you trying not to look excited? Like, no big deal, but inside your heart's just thumping?
Yeah, you do. And there's, on my walk-off, that was probably the best game I'll ever have. I couldn't hold it back on that one.
I'm sure.
On the Grand Slam, I think I made it around without smiling until I got to home plate with my teammates there, you know, showing more emotion and excitement than I was. So then I finally let it out. But yeah, that walk-off home run, and you know, in that same game, I hit the home run with 2 strikes and 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th to tie the game. So when I hit the walk-off homer in the 12th, it was just more or less, I couldn't believe it happened. Basically twice in one game. You know, that's another one. I don't even think you dream about that one. It's just so it's so poetic that you don't even think it's a possibility. And somehow it ended up happening.
This is the bat. This is the walk-off bat.
Yeah.
Now some guys would continue to use that bat after a walk-off, but not you.
I can't do it. You know, I'm well, as we've discussed, I'm somewhat of a memorabilia guy. I'd be a fool not to put it aside and have it in my office to look back at one day, because I highly doubt I'll have a game or a moment quite like that one, you know, unless maybe I do something like that in the World Series.
That'd be cool.
I think that'll probably be it for me.
That bat would get its own room. That wouldn't be in here.
No.
That'd be the World Series bat room. Yeah.
Forget the cars in the garage. Just make it all for that.
Yeah. Now you've just completed your 4th year in the majors, and every year playing time has increased. And this past season, 2014, you clearly established yourself as the White Sox #1 catcher. So are you now, Tyler, at the stage of your career where you feel, okay, I've proven it, I'm #1, I don't have to worry about my job anymore? Or is it the opposite? Do you always think that, you know, every day you have to prove yourself?
I think in any sport really nowadays, with how young kids are developing so early and they're starting to work out and doing this and you know, training from such a young age, that someone's always coming for your job. And now there's that thought that, you know, guys are getting too old at 30 or 32, which, you know, I'm thinking that's going to be my prime. So I'm looking forward to those days. But, you know, there's the Mike Trouts of the world and, you know, those kind of people, those kind of phenomenal athletes. And one of them can come up at your position in your organization anytime. So I don't think you can ever get too comfortable. Even guys with long-term contracts, you know, lose their jobs, get released in the midst of them, and while you're financially secure, you know, ultimately we enjoy playing the game. That's more what it's about for us, the fun and your teammates, the camaraderie and all that. So you always got to know someone's on your tail and keep working hard.
Assume for a minute that I have a magic wand, which is a dangerous thing, but And I could make you right now the best defensive catcher in baseball or the best offensive catcher in baseball. Which would help your team win more games?
Well, the reality would be defensively. You know, a catcher's ultimate job is controlling the pitching staff, controlling the running game, framing pitches, blocking balls, throwing out runners. Rarely do you hear people talk about, you know, this catcher needs to worry about hitting 300 or hitting 20 homers. Sure. And the rest will take care of itself. No, the reality is it's all about the defense first. And, you know, in today's game, you kind of have to have both, because guys are so good and we're all so well trained and we've had so much practice at it that you're almost expected to be decent offensively, and you're expected to be very good defensively. So I would lean that direction. I think that has more to do with winning games and winning championships than the offensive side.
Scout yourself for us, defensively as a catcher. What are your strengths? What do you need to work on?
I would say my strengths.
Do I sound like your manager right now? Or?
No, he wouldn't be that blunt. I think definitely my strengths behind the plate are calling a game, you know, recognizing the opposition, what they're doing in the midst of an at-bat, and figuring out the way to get them out. In addition to that, I would say pitch framing has really, I think it's always been a strength of mine, but it's really become something I'm very passionate about, and I study a lot now, trying to watch other guys and see what they're doing to get certain pitches called, and trying to bring that into my own game, which is something I'm really focused on at the moment, and I think that has huge benefits in the midst of an inning, a game, or a season, where you can really change the whole outcome, you know, basically a season. If you're consistent with getting certain pitches are harder to hit than other pitches, and if you can give your pitcher a little more margin for error on those, they're going to be that much better at getting guys out. As far as things I need to work on, probably all the rest of it, and both of those things that I think I'm good at. You know, kind of all that needs to, again, be a constant battle and a constant work in progress, because there's always somebody bigger, better, stronger that's coming for you. So you're always focused on all that. But, you know, in particular, I don't really think there's one facet of catching that I'm necessarily poor at, but I think all of it can be improved.
You're a big guy, what, 6'3"?
6'4".
6'4", and
don't short me. 250.
Is your size ever a bad thing? I mean, you know, I would assume behind the plate it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But at the plate, is it, you know, is it ever a detriment?
You know, I think if I were ever 180 pounds and physically mature, I'd be able to answer that really honestly. I would imagine if I weighed 40 pounds less, I'd be a little more agile, left and right, blocking. I really don't imagine I'd be any quicker throwing or anything of that. Maybe a little bit faster running, which isn't too important for a catcher. But, you know, I think the benefits of being big are plenty. Pitchers love throwing to the big target instead of throwing to a little 33-inch mitt. They feel like they're throwing to a 3-foot by 3-foot chest. And I also think there's benefits with bigger size, with umpires calling strikes and balls, where I can make that pitch on the edge look a little bit better because I don't have to move as much as maybe a smaller guy, or I can keep more pitches inside my shoulders, which appear to the rest of the world as something that went over the plate. When you narrow that up, it's a little bit harder to hit that target.
Well, you got a good staff on the White Sox, including a pitcher that was a Cy Young finalist. What's the difference? You know, I'm sitting in the seat, all pitchers look the same to me. What's the difference between a great pitcher, like a Sale or a Fernandez or whoever, and most everybody else? Is it just strictly stuff? Is it occasion? What is it?
I think there's a lot of things that come into play. You know, you take a Chris Sale or a Fernandez or a Kershaw, a Carpenter. Those guys kind of have the whole package where they're blessed and gifted to have a great arm and some stuff that they've acquired or learned throughout their lives. They definitely have the mindset of a champion. Yeah. You know, as cliche as that is, they're out there, they're competing. They know they're going to beat you, and even if you beat them, they know they're going to beat you the next time. They have great command, understanding of how to change speeds, how to change eye levels, throwing high, low, in and out, making sure hitters are uncomfortable. And recently I actually saw Carpenter did a great job of changing the tempo. You know, hitting and pitching, it's all about tempo and timing. And I've often wondered why pitchers don't change up their windup or anything more often, but he'll mix it up every once in a while, and especially in a tough at bat, he'll just completely change the tempo. And I've had it happen to me a couple times, and it's uncomfortable because your mind starts going to something that's usually just natural. And now all of a sudden you have to think about it, and we're not really trained to think about that tempo and timing aspects when you're trying to hit. It's just, you see it and you do it. And when that changes, it's something that gets on your mind and makes it even more challenging.
You're what, 28? You'll be 28 for the next season. So let's say, you know, God willing.
29 in January.
Will you? Okay. God willing, you're playing 5, 6, 7, 8 more years. Do you ever look way down the road, and when the career is over, what have you hoped to accomplish, both personally and team-wise? And
you know, the biggest thing for me is I just want to be able to do things with my kids when they get to that age, whether it's sports or dance or, you know, whatever they get into. I enjoyed that with my father. He always made sure to coach my teams and my brother, and you know, he was there for every practice, and we were relatively poor growing up, but he made it a point that he was there, and you know, he was going to get me that new bat or that new glove. Like, he always made that a priority. So that's kind of always been something that I've kind of dreamt about doing, is whenever my kids reach that age, I want to make sure I did the same things that he did, because looking back, those were probably some of the best moments of my life, and I want to make sure those happen for them too.
You seem like you know that you're a lucky guy, that you're lucky to play ball for a living. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. I don't take it for granted, and it's tough to see other players that appear like they're taking it for granted.
Coming up next on Fields and Faith, Tyler and his wife Nancy talk about their growing family, one that until they turned to the little flower, they never believed they'd have. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Fields and Faith. St. Michael the Archangel in Woodstock, Georgia is the family parish for Tyler Flowers, the starting catcher for the Chicago White Sox. Often, Tyler will drop in during the off-season to pray in thanksgiving for his family, his wife Nancy, and their daughter and son. They have a particular devotion to the little flower, and because of that, they have a heartwarming story to share. Nancy, welcome to Fields and Faith.
Thank you.
You're under the weather today, so we appreciate that you're sitting down for a few minutes.
Sure.
And thanks for bringing some class to the set, because it wasn't there previously.
My pleasure.
Yes, for the both of us.
Yeah.
You've been married how long?
For 6 years.
6 years. And you met in high school.
We did.
Because your lockers were close together.
Yep.
You both had last names with F. You have a very personal and private story. It's a great story, though. It's a very inspirational story. Because for a while in your married life, you didn't think you could have children, right? So kind of walk us through the situation and especially the solution.
Well, we had been married. We started trying to have kids pretty much right away. And we had tried for almost 3 years. We went to multiple Catholic doctors, and nobody could find a solution as to why we weren't getting pregnant. But it wasn't happening. And so I was kind of demoralized, down on, almost feeling bad for myself. Like, this is one of my purposes in life, and I can't fulfill it with my husband.
And then we got to the point of talking about adoption and such. And I don't think we were really at that stage yet, but we were far enough along where we were at least discussing it. And I know she was feeling down and discouraged by all that. And all the doctors just continued to tell us, prayer is kind of their last resort thing, where there's nothing going on. It's just, God's in control. So continue to pray.
They literally found nothing physically,
nothing.
An explanation that you couldn't conceive.
Nothing.
Other than continue to pray. Okay. So then you said, okay, well, maybe we better consider adoption. It's at least on the table.
Exactly.
What happens then?
So then it was actually just a fluke. We were like substitutes for Eucharistic adoration. And we went in, we had to go in one day to the church, and we were there praying. And I just was in tears. I'm going to tear up now. Just begging God for it. Just why not? And I was reading this book it's based on the teachings of St. Therese. And there was a little part that she said, you know, if God asked me to choose anything in my life, I would not choose anything, because all I want is what God wants. And it just spoke so close to my heart. You know, okay, God, you're in control. If you don't want this, I don't want it either. I'm just going to give it all to you, and we'll just go from there. And then 2 weeks later, at 7 in the morning, I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. Screamed.
It was a heck of a morning.
Yeah.
Were you aware, Tyler, of what Nancy went through 2 weeks previous at Adoration?
No, I mean, I think I noticed her being emotional, but you know, I was focused on the Eucharist at that point too. So I think that was kind of a good time for both of us, just to have a quiet conversation with God there. And you know, shortly thereafter we discussed it, and of course, with all the excitement of finding out she was pregnant, we discussed a lot of things that we both went through, and I know she went through a lot emotionally and spiritually through that whole process of struggling with conceiving, and ultimately it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
Why'd you have the book in the first place?
My mom, she was the prayer crusader throughout the entire process. She was sending me novenas. Every month there was a different novena that she wanted me to try, and she was praying mostly through the intercession of St. Joseph and then St. Therese. And so she kept doing the 24-day Glory Be to the Father novena to St. Therese. And she said, if you have a girl, you have to name her Therese. And Therese has to be in the name. And if it's a boy, Joseph has to be in the name. And then she also gave me this book to read. And it was just, I happened to have it with me, and brought it in, read it during Adoration, and
That was the first time?
that was the first time I had opened the book.
The book that your mom recommended, you take it that night to Adoration.
Exactly.
And start to page
And
through it.
just start.
And you saw that?
And I saw the little excerpt from her book, and
Was
there
that
it
the
is.
first time in this long process that you were at the stage to say, God, if this is not to be, I'm okay with it?
That was the first time
Really?
I truly believed I was okay with it. I think I told myself, or like we would talk about it and be like, well, it's okay, we could always adopt, but I
Right.
wasn't convicted of that until I read that. And then that's when the conviction was like, okay, I will be okay with it.
Yeah. What did the doctor, 2 weeks later, you're pregnant.
Yeah,
The
nothing.
doctor says what? I mean, this is the same doctor that said you're probably never going to have children. What did he say?
He said nothing.
He had no...
I honestly never even went back to him, because he only does like fertility, but then once you get pregnant, you don't go back to that doctor. You have to go to an obstetrician then.
But of course we told him. And
Yeah, we told him.
He was ecstatic.
He was
too,
super
and-
ecstatic.
Sure.
But I don't think we've actually seen him since then. We went through
Okay.
3 years of,
Yeah, getting to know
with
each other
him.
pretty well.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Your daughter's name is?
Mia Therese.
Mia Therese. So now, understandably, you both would have a great devotion to the little flower, correct?
Yes.
And she's right
A great
there in your
name for her
hallway.
too.
The little flower. Yeah.
It works out
It's
well.
kind of a good play on words there, yeah. Is she still someone you pray to and talk to and on a daily
Yeah.
basis?
Yes.
She's definitely special to us, and every child is a blessing. But
Yeah.
Mia, I think, is especially a special child to us. You know, being our first child and what we went through to conceive her. Very, very lucky to have her, and we're very thankful.
Mia has a little statue of Therese that she'll play with, and so we want to instill our devotion to her into Mia as well.
So when she's old enough,
We'll
you'll
explain.
probably
it.
tell her the
Sure,
story.
of
Yeah,
course.
definitely.
Yeah.
Would you consider, Nancy, that she's a miracle child, or where would you go with that?
Yeah, I would
You would.
say, I don't know if I would say miracle child. I would say that everything happens in God's timing. And, when we look back at it, he was in the minor leagues. He wasn't making much money. I was working as a night shift as a nurse. So if I had gotten pregnant right away, and he would be gone, and I would still have to work, and like how we would raise a child that way, looking back, I don't know how it would have worked. But as soon as I got pregnant that next year, he was in the major leagues. I didn't have to work anymore. I got to go up, live with him in Chicago, deliver in Chicago, and he was able to be there. So just looking back, it was just the timing of all of God's plan is amazing. And I wish I could have seen it sooner instead of, after the fact.
It would have been a lot easier.
It would have been, yeah.
But it sounds like now your belief in God's plan is even stronger. I mean, you always
yeah.
believed in the plan that it's God's will, not ours. You always believed that, but because of this,
Yeah. Now we're
There's no-
really
there's no
convicted of
question.
it. Exactly.
You look back at everything, I mean, it all makes perfect sense, just with the timing of my career and her career and where we were living and every situation, everything you can take into account, looking back at it, this was the right time for it to happen.
now you have a son.
We do.
A little
Brantley.
son. So what is it about our Catholic faith that you hope to instill in your children when they get old enough? What is it that you want them to appreciate and to know and to live and to love about our faith?
Just that you can always count on God, no matter what. He is always there. It's just like we said, it's His plan, and you can always fall back on that, no matter what's going on in your life. You can always go to the Eucharist. You can always go sit in front of the tabernacle and just break down, and God will always pick you back up. You know, it might not be that day, it might not be the next day. For us, it was 2 weeks, but it's always, you know, He's always there for us.
And Tyler, you too, I know you're both born and raised Catholic, I know that, but you have said that since Nancy, your faith is even more meaningful and deeper. How so?
Well, she's just been a big influence on me to take Catholicism more serious than I had before. You know, being a younger child in athletics and sports, you know, I attended church every Sunday, but, you know, it was more, I have to go do this for an hour. And once we started dating in high school, she made it clear that Catholicism was a big part of her life, and she wasn't going to settle down with someone that didn't take it serious. So I kind of started taking it more serious once we started dating, and she still pushes me to this day to continue to pray and learn and do all those things, and she continues to influence me every day.
Well, you have a beautiful family to show for it.
Thank you.
And thank you both for your time and your hospitality, and God bless you both and your family.
Absolutely, thank you.
My thanks to Tyler and Nancy Flowers for their hospitality, for sharing their story, and for reminding all of us that it is God's will and not ours as we make our journey. This is Fields and Faith, and I'm Bob Dolan.